listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier, right here on LA Talk Radio.
We'll get on to that. There you go.
I should warn you, Mark Ryan is a big he believes all of this shit. The pyramids were built by aliens, the Aztecs.
No,
aliens.
that's not true. Let's not go off on that tangent. No, there's a lot of stuff that I'm fascinated by and interested, particularly the physics, and we've talked a lot about in the show about how physics and magic have almost come nose to nose.
It's amazing, yeah.
It's amazing. When you start talking about creating antimatter at the Large Hadron Collider, we grew up with spaceships that were being driven by matter-antimatter engines. So to me, to actually have somebody say, we held antimatter in a magnetic trap for 6.5 minutes, and then it self-annihilated itself. To me, that's kind of like, wow.
Let me stop him right there, not to interrupt you, Phil, but we're always kind of we're not necessarily sure, since Mark Ryan has lived in the covert sector for so long, where his information is coming from, so we can't challenge it. So if you hear something that you think, well, I don't know.
Well, this is the chance today. I'm going
This
to
is
say
the
some
chance,
mad
exactly.
stuff today.
Phil, you wanted to say something.
I just came back from the UK where we were shooting parts for Truth Is Out There too, Ancient Mysteries.
Nice way to plug it.
I was supposed to be in France, and I postponed part of it because I knew we did not have enough time to do this part of the shoot correctly, and it was to go into some of the underground bunkers where the Nazis experimented with their flying saucer technology. Right. And we would be the first camera crew allowed in there. And so I've been immersing myself in research for this. And one of the things people keep asking me, and it comes back to this idea of, magic meeting physics, is it true that the Nazis were really, really interested in researching paranormal and supernatural? And what's fascinating to me in reading our own but our own intel post-war, when we were when our troops, the U.S. troops, were going through Germany trying to get our hands on every bit of technology we could before our allies could, that what came through was yes and no. They weren't interested so much in supernatural and paranormal as they were researching their own belief that ancient cultures had technological advancement.
And that is proof that here on Combat Radio we let everyone have their own opinion.
Right.
And we respect them as such, because I really think the only thing we were interested in when we were putting the OSS and switching it over to the CIA is Russian manufacturing numbers and shit like that.
Well,
I mean, I may be wrong.
But you can still get the original, what's called, I am not making this up, the original Lusty report that catalogs all the intel that we gathered in terms of technology. And you're absolutely right. What we were really going after, at least initially, and it was brilliantly set up, the plan to go after this, was manufacturing technology. And at the same time, we came across, we didn't even know about how widespread the Nazis' underground factory facilities were. Okay. And once we found all this, then there were these, additional treasure troves of information that led to other research.
There were two interesting branches. Oh, sorry. There were two interesting branches. I'm fascinated to hear what you've got to say about that side of it, particularly about the Bell side of it. One was the fact that they were flying a thing called the Horton Wing in 1938, which was a tailless airplane that looked like the stealth bomber today. They actually, two brothers they actually had a thing called the Horton Wing, which they flew before the war even broke out. And so they were that far advanced in their thinking, the Germans. But the other thing was there was a real department called the Ananeb, whose job it was to go around the world and gather mystical, magical objects to prove this concept that Thuringian history, the history of the Nazis and going back to Iceland, actually did exist. And the Brits had their own department called the London Controlling Section that waged magical warfare, psychological warfare.
Look,
on
Mike's
the Nazis.
getting ready to walk out of here, so let's and he's already had enough.
But I am fascinated by this idea that, let's face it, if we do not understand a technology, if we do not understand especially the power, the energy, how the energy is being harnessed, of course it's going to seem like magic. It's going to seem like paranormal. It's going to seem like supernatural, or we're going to say, oh boy, those ancient cultures, they spent a lot of time creating that pottery, not realizing that pottery actually, if you put it together, works as a battery.
Yeah, well, one of the weird things is I've always had trouble with the supernatural and the paranormal that's then used to describe something that looks completely normal that you just don't understand.
Right.
I mean, that's always been a weird thing. Not to pick on people, but, like when they do ghost hunting, right? And they talk about, we're going to image a thermal signature or an electrical signature. those are normal things. Electricity and thermal stuff we know, right? If you detect electricity, you're detecting electricity. Why are you declaring it paranormal? That is always something I've had trouble with. But again, with the ancient technologies, what fascinates me is half the time we don't know what it is. And that's what allows you to, like, speculate all the way from it was just a rock or a piece of pottery to it was an alien, communicating device.
Well, it's so
right.
It's like
it's so interesting how the prism through which we view this, this technology that we don't understand, it so often goes one way or the other. Either we deride it in a way that allows us to maintain our superiority to that ancient culture, or quite to the contrary, we build it up so dramatically so that we can feel inferior to that ancient culture.
But when we build it up, notice we never say it's the ancients that did it. It was always the aliens.
Right.
If it's impressive, it was aliens. If it's not impressive,
but
it was ancients.
As Mark and I have talked about vis-a-vis the pyramids, though, might we not be actually just talking about their illegal aliens? That it was illegal aliens that built the pyramids?
All those immigrants.
I was coming from this point of view. There was a big question about vitrification of Iron Age hill forts in the UK, about whether you could actually melt rock to create these vitrified hill forts. And some years ago, they actually did an experiment where they actually built what they thought the mixture of stone and earth of the side of a hill fort. They put wood up against it. They put it in a windy place so that the wind would fuel the fire. They kept putting the wood on, and guess what? The rock melted.
What are you talking
and
about?
Vitrified hill fort. Your guest knows what I'm talking about. Why don't you ask
He's the
him?
only one. He's got the PhD in the room.
You know what? Is General Zod joining us later?
I'm
going to ask General Zod the question. What the hell is Mark Ryan talking about? General?
The general is contemplating his answer.
Of Iron Age hill forts.
I think the cool thing is what you just said is how many. It just proves how smart people are. How many people out here now have looked at something and said, I may not know exactly how those people did it, but here's a way they could have done it.
Right.
And they come up and do it and recreate it, just proving the point that people are smart and can do stuff.
I think that the ancient civilizations were much smarter, were much better educated than we give them credit for.
Oh, I think so.
I've got a book called The Wildwood Tarot, which is out at the moment, which is about what they call the European Wheel of the Year. And so it's based on the concept, very much like the Native American Indian medicine wheel, where the midwinter solstice and the midsummer solstice were their points of the year, not Christmas, New Year. No, it was to do with where the sun set, and that's how why Stonehenge was built the way it was. And Newgrange in Ireland to this day, I think it's the midwinter solstice, the sun comes up, or it's midsummer solstice, and shines straight down that long tunnel into the heart of a burial mound. How did they do that? Well, they had nothing else to do.
Right. I always, I want to follow up on that. I always feel like I would be a much more famous physicist if I didn't have TV.
I want to ask, do you go crazy with this stuff? Like when you're in a Starbucks and people recognize you, be like, dude, what about this crazy?
There's two types. It's really funny. There's two types of people, and it's just starting because the first few series, there wasn't as many people watching it.
No, it's crazy.
I would say in the last 2 months, it drives my kids nuts, right? We go in somewhere, and somebody will come up and go, wait, I know you. You're on Ancient Aliens. And they get all excited.
Oh, shit.
But my daughter's always looking at them, and I hate to say this, she always looks at them and thinks to herself, are you a crazy person, or are you someone who's, like, into the cool stuff in the show?
Well, you're the guy they totally found.
You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier, right here on LA Talk Radio.